Welcome to Worship at Home with Northampton Methodist Circuit. My name's Jenny Brooks and I'm a local preacher in training. Today we're thinking about the lectionary reading for the 15th of August, and the Gospel reading is John chapter 6 verses 51 to 58. John's Gospel generally is trying to achieve something quite different to the other Gospels. The writer's not only telling us the narrative of who Jesus is and what he did, John's also attempting to help us understand the meaning behind Jesus' words and actions. And part of our struggle in the 21st century is to understand the meaning of some of the metaphors and allegories that John uses. Some of what he's using as allegory and metaphor we understand because we also have the Hebrew scriptures, what we now call the Old Testament. And some of those illustrations are in the Old Testament. The story of Manna in the desert, when God provided food for the people. And metaphors in the Psalms about God as a provider of food and nourishment. If we think about people's favourite psalm, the 23rd Psalm, it includes the picture of God preparing a banquet for us, even in the presence of our enemies. John chapter 6 has a lot of content. It brings us the feeding of the 5,000 and walking on water, before we come to the verses that we're focusing on today. And Jesus describes himself as the bread of life. There seem to be two parallel allegories happening in this conversation between Jesus and the crowd. Jesus is telling people that they need to take into their body his teachings, his essence. Miraculous feeding is not enough. He doesn't want people to follow him just because he's given them bread and fish. People need to understand the spiritual truth behind his words and actions. And for us now, making Jesus our way of life is vital in becoming a real follower. The words of Jesus in this chapter are reflected both in his words to the disciples at the Last Supper and those that we use in the liturgy for communion. The more complex idea that John might be putting to us is that if we take Jesus as our spiritual food, we then become more like him and are more able to represent him to others, to inspire others to follow him. So my understanding of this reading is that spiritual food is essential for an abundant life. If we take into our minds and spirit the core concepts of Jesus' teaching, then we will be sustained by them. That energy that we have can then be used to share with others our knowledge of Jesus, his love and grace. And perhaps as a way of thinking about this, perhaps you could take a moment to think about your favourite meal. What would you choose? Something you love the taste and smell of, but also something that reminds you of good times, probably with people you love, and maybe of happy times. Talking about food reminds me that meals are more than just food for our bodies. They're times of great social bonding and the making of new memories. And perhaps that's what Jesus is asking us to do. To take in his spiritual teaching as our food and to share it, to make new memories, to make new ideas with each other about his love and grace. I'd like to invite you to reflect on the image that comes from the Roots material for today by Maria Hunt and entitled The Gift of Self. I ask you to reflect on this image of floating hands, open and palm upwards, looking as if light is shining from them. Smaller, darker images of hands can float in the lower right-hand side of the image and are easily missed. As you reflect on this image and we close this reflection, I ask you to think about these two questions. Jesus offers himself for us and to us. How might we receive him? And how would we offer ourselves and Jesus to others? Because this is the core of what Jesus would love us to do.